firsthand 9/11, survived the financial crisis through a legendary hedge fund conference called SALT in Las Vegas 9 years in a row, twice in Singapore, and once in Tokyo, and had my own finance show on television. After all that, I backed my way into presidential politics the way most people get into drugs. Along the way, I made friends with a billionaire real estate developer from Manhattan, a man who would go on to become the 45th president of the United States. I was among the first people to learn Donald Trump was running for president, although I didn't believe him at the time. And we ran in the same circles and attended the same charity and political fundraisers. For a short time, I was even a political antagonist who challenged him to fights on television. Somehow, all that earned me a spot on the political campaign of the century, raising money and stumping for the candidate on TV. It was Donald Trump himself who ultimately gave me my 11 days of fame in the White House. And it was Donald Trump who had to toss me out like an empty Big Mac box when the time came. In one way, this book is the story of my life and my unique friendship with the president, but in a larger view, it's also the story of an America that changed dramatically during those years. Both Donald Trump and I had fathers who thrived in the prosperity of the post-war years and benefited from America's firm belief and investment in its middle and lower classes. One father dug the sand that made cement, and the other poured the cement into the foundation on which the American dream was built. The America they grew up in was founded on a solid economic footing. It was unafraid to assert itself on the world stage when necessary. As we, their sons, came along and the 20th century wore on, some of that prosperity vanished before our eyes. The trade deals we had struck in the aftermath of the war became worse and worse as they were renegotiated by elitist politicians out of touch with the American worker. And our tax system fell far out of balance with what was sensible and necessary. The American government then laid the groundwork for a financial collapse and blamed its most influential financial institutions when that collapse happened. Our leaders became feckless and unable to stand up for the United States of America. The aspirational working class, hard-working men and women who, like Fred Trump and Alexander Scaramucci, had struggled to achieve success, suffered a sharp decline, while career politicians in Washington lined their pockets and held Congress in gridlock. With the coming of the internet, vast, powerful companies run by tech oligarchs controlled the content we read and the things we bought. Though these companies professed to be progressive, their actions were actually intrusive, racist, and limiting. The lives of American citizens declined too, and when those people looked for help, no one was listening, at least not until the most improbable of all candidates came riding out of New York to champion their cause. For my money, however, the best stories are comeback stories. You know the moment in Rocky when the music starts to swell and Balboa is getting up from the mat? It's when Apollo Creed starts looking worried, and the camera zooms in for a tight shot of Rocky's puffy, cut me Mick eye. If you're like me, that's when you start getting butterflies. That's when the story really begins to mean something to you. Maybe because, like me, you've been down on the mat yourself. You know what it feels like to be counted out, to know at the same time with absolute certainty that you haven't thrown your last punch. While I was making my way through the Ivy League and the upper crust of New York finance, Donald Trump was down in construction sites with his contractors, slipping $100 bills to waiters in restaurants on his properties, and fixing up an ice rink in New York City when the government got too bloated and arrogant to do the job. He would also become one of the greatest brand builders and businessmen of our time. He existed in a world of stratospheric wealth, and yet somehow was able to hold on to the blue-collar world of his father all at once. I, on the other hand, let wealth and influence change me. The more I made, the further I descended into the echo chamber of private clubs and wealthy communities.